Welcome back, everyone, to Virtue's brand of wrestling here on the BigVitoBrand.com. And I am Virtue, once again being joined by my esteemed co-host, the remarkable Robbie Vice. You know what I want to call you? The
What's
remarkable
up?
Robbie, the remarkable Robbie Vice. Vice, but just say Vice. But anyway, what's up, man?
Man, not a lot. I guess there was some elderly wrestling that went on this past weekend we could talk about. And I'm taking another title. Not only am I remarkable Robbie Vice, I am king of the marks, and I'm just gonna take it in right now. So there's a few marks I don't really want on my team, but to the rest of the cool ones, I'm gonna take them under my wing.
So let me ask you something before we talk about Bill Goldberg, the Jewish man who went to Saudi Arabia to wrestle, and the Undertaker, the guy that once said in a promo years ago, "Heads will roll."
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
before we talk about that, and Brock Lesnar. So if I call you a mark, I'm a mark myself. Right now, I've done a little bit of indie wrestling. I've gotten paid. I've made some T-shirt money. Right. So I guess you could say I've made a little bit of money from the wrestling business, but I've never been in WWE or any of the big. So to me, no, I've never been in the wrestling business. But like, I know it's a carnival act, right? And the word mark comes from the carnies seeing the patrons walking down the midway when they play that first game, right? The guy trying to win something for his girlfriend, and they donk $10 off. That first carny puts a chalk outline on their back, like pats him on the back. So when he goes down the midway with his girlfriend, every carny knows the mark that pays. That's where thank you, Nate Matson, the amazing Nate Matson, independent professional wrestler from Michigan. Guy should be in NXT training, but I think he's training in somewhere with TNA. So it is what it is. He pointed that out to me, and I wrote an article about it. So if I call you a mark, what do you think?
I don't really care for one, and I think it's true because this is the deal. I don't get a free WWE network for WWE. I don't have Vince McMahon or writers calling me. I don't go out there and wrestle on Monday nights. I don't even wrestle on the indies. So what am I? Am I someone that pays for wrestling t-shirts, wrestling pay-per-views, and wrestling live shows? Yes, I'm a mark. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad word. And apparently people think they're above that now. Like they're insiders, they're smarks, and I don't know.
And Meltzer and Keller and that whole crew,
Sure.
they've really set this precedent because not one of them has ever really been in the wrestling business. There's just been moles, right, that have leaked them some news. Now, granted, moles that spin a narrative to the dirt sheets that might make said moles look good. And that's been going on for years. And so people turn to these guys, fans do, for like news sources. Hey, what's going to happen? And I think that it's spread like wildfire. And now an average fan who listens and reads these people think that they're in the business too, but really we're all just fans.
Yeah, and I will say this about Meltzer. I don't like listening to a lot of his guesses on what's going to happen, but if you ever listen to him talk about like old wrestling shit, that's super entertaining. Like the historical value of Dave Meltzer and just his recollection of things he's seen, I really enjoy that.
I've
I don't
told
really
you I've
enjoy
given Meltzer a pass.
Sure.
Have I not said that?
Yeah, you have.
Because
Yeah, absolutely.
because when he talks about wrestling, it's like my 7-year-old self talking about John Elway beating the Cleveland Browns in 3 out of 4 years AFC Championship game.
That hurts. I don't like that.
But I'm just, you know what I mean? 7-year-old me marked out for John Elway. Now, when I talk about it as an adult, you tell me, you bring up the drive, and I start talking about that time.
Sure.
That's how Meltzer is with wrestling. I believe he's the Raymond Babbitt, the Rain Man of wrestling. I'm not saying he's autistic. Raymond Babbitt was a character in a movie that played an autistic guy.
Correct.
But you know what I mean. So anyway, moving on. But it's funny, right?
Everybody Wait, this is my last comment. If you get worked, you're a mark.
But by any means necessary, whether it's like me going and doing the independent wrestling and playing the Virtue character as a ringside manager, or I don't know, me being Virtue on Twitter.
Yeah, if you are Virtue on Twitter and people are upset by what you say, then those people are worked, therefore they're marks.
Gotcha. Now, what do you think when people hate the real person because of the gimmick that they play? Does that mean I have X-Pac heat?
No, that just means they're stupid. Really, that's like hating Arnold Schwarzenegger for the first Terminator movie. That's like it doesn't make sense. It's stupid. It's a character. It's not. It's look what happened with Roman Reigns when he had cancer. Everyone came together. We're like, well, we don't hate the character. Or we hate the character, not the person. So if you go beyond that, then you just suck. You're like those Toronto fans that cheered when Durant got hurt. You're just a shitty person, man.
Yeah, and I've been on the record. I put NXT shows over. I put certain things in New Japan over. Hell, I like 205 Live when Enzo was in there. And these are all things that I say for the most part I generally don't like. And it's like I got chastised.
You put NXT over the main roster for the past 6 weeks.
Yeah, and that's fine because usually if something's not my cup of tea, that's fine. I'll still find things I like about it. I don't have to like be aggressive saying I like every aspect of it, like being a New Japan fan, a Ring of Honor fan, a 205 Live fan. And I know there are people out there that do, and sure, maybe the Virtue character gives them a hard time. When people watch wrestling all the time and they get hyped for wrestling, so hey, guess what? I'm watching NXT UK in 30 minutes. Even when they say Raw's coming on, and then they're excited about it, but yet they complain for 3 hours.
Right.
Why can't I get my pleasure out of wrestling by kind of, not trolling, but, putting the pressure on the people that maybe overwatch wrestling? I don't know if there's such a thing. I think there has to be. If you're watching more than 5 hours of wrestling a week, that has to be extreme, right?
I would say, yeah. I would say I probably get close to 5 between Raw and SmackDown. But I'm not going to lie. The last few Raws, I've either fallen asleep at 10:15 on Eastern time, or I'm sitting there playing my Switch, which there's a lot of great games coming out. I'm excited for that. Yep. But I haven't been super interested. And the people, if you are so interested that you're still watching every single product that WWE is putting out, along with AEW, along with the AEW YouTube and New Japan, that's insane to me. That's crazy.
Speaking of Switch, my most excited thing from E3, and there's a lot. I'm a VR fan, right? So I was kind of seeing what PSVR was coming out with. A limited run games fan because I like physical copies, and they put out the physical copies of indie titles. A lot of things going on out of all the platforms. The arcade one up, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. They just revealed a Star Wars one today. I'm marking out that. But the one game, like, I don't know what it is because I'm a Halloween baby. Luigi's Mansion 3, man. Like, I watched that trailer like 5 times. But anyway, anything that stuck out from E3 for you?
I marked out for Elder Ring just because I'm a huge fan of FromSoft. I've platinumed every single one of their games. It's one of the few things I still play. I love George R.R. Martin. It's based off, I guess, some of that style is based off this book called Fever Dream that George R.R. Martin wrote. That is one of my favorite books of all time. So I'm super hyped for that. I'm hyped for Luigi's Mansion. There's just so many things.
Sega Genesis Mini. That thing
Sega
looks
Genesis
awesome.
Mini, and soon, eventually, I'll have a PlayStation Mini I can play, and then I can get.
You will. That's packed up, ready to go.
Nintendo was reigning supreme at E3, and that's
and I like seeing that. I called out Sega a little bit. I'm like, can't you at least tell us Sonic Mania 2 is in development? Like, that's all I wanted to hear. But
Fantasy 8 remake. I'm pretty.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go to Showdown here. So this kind of ties into us talking about wrestling fans, just never like being happy or getting insulted at their marks. I mean, looking at Goldberg and Undertaker, let's evaluate this. The match was the shit. These are 2 older guys that have never worked together. They did a 13-hour flight right over to Saudi Arabia, probably with minimal preparation. So they're dealing with jet lag. They're in a country where you're literally looking over your shoulder all the time.
Especially Goldberg, my God.
Yes. Okay, and the fact that they're on this main event and they just want to get done and go home, and Goldberg cracks his head on the door before the match, probably really hard, which I think could have stemmed to knocking himself silly before the match even started. Everybody knows the match would have been okay if he never got busted open from the post or the tie rod or whatever. When that's really when
10,000 degrees in the building,
and it was 100 and it was hot. So wait, was that an open stadium?
Yes.
Okay, so there you have it. All the recipes for disaster, and the fact that it happened, disaster happened, and it was botch after botch at that point. The choke slam at the end was maybe 4 feet high. Taker almost dropped or did drop Goldberg on his head in the tombstone. But yet, fans who never worked the business are sitting there, instead of just saying, wow, that was bad, I feel bad for the guys, and kind of being objective like I am, I'm not sure what you're going to say, talking about all the scenarios that led to them being sandbags. They're sitting there wishing, oh, never wrestle again, you're past your prime. Like, I hate hearing that stuff. I was sad to see that poor performance, but I hated seeing the fans who never did anything critiquing them. Like if it was a Lance Storm saying what he saw, okay, but what's your take on this?
It wasn't good. I
Which
never
we agree. We're not disagreeing with that.
Right. So this is where I stand on it. I don't think this is the fault of the performers, because I think against the right guys, they could have had a decent match.
Which, that's a great point, and we'll get to you saying that. There's a segue that's going to...
This, if we're going to put the fault on anyone, I have to blame mostly Bill Goldberg for headbutting the door, having a laceration on his forehead, and most likely being concussed. Because if you recall, I believe it was a Monday Night Raw he did that, went out and had a really weird promo because he just had a concussion and he was just rambling and it made no sense. So, yeah, that's probably on Bill. Undertaker, he can't... I don't want to say he can't go anymore, but he should not be trying to lift someone as large as Bill Goldberg under the conditions of being jet lagged, the 100-degree heat, the humidity.
Yep.
I don't think it was a good recipe. And like I said, I think whoever was baking that cake put some poison in there, because it was bad. It was really
put some
bad.
dynamite candles in it. That's what they did.
The
thing is, when you're working together, you have to know each other's tendencies. Like, when you pick people up, you got to post. You got to shift your weight the right way. And these two guys both looked like sandbags. And again, I'm not going to critique them as workers, but the situation they were put in with the long flight, the heat, etc., never working together. Maybe if you put them against the right opponent, which we're going to talk about here, you get something decent. And Vince McMahon and the agents should have known. Why this whole match was about two things: the entrance and the finish, okay? So with the two entrances that these guys do, first of all, Goldberg should have knew not to headbutt the goddamn door and probably knock his brains loose before the match started. But they're both going to have 4 or 5 minute entrances, and they did, right? There's 8 minutes right there in entrances, okay? You're going to have another 2 or 3 in post-match celebration. You're already at 10 or 11 minutes, Rob. All you need to do is have a 4-minute match. They could have kept it simple, spear right out of the gates, kick out, raise, maybe the jackhammer right out of the gate, kick out, raise. Taker does a tombstone, or a choke slam, kick out for Goldberg. Does the first tombstone, kick out, and then maybe Goldberg gets one last offensive thing in, and then boom, tombstone over, 4 minutes. But do you think that they don't do that? Because say they had a 4-minute flawless match of all finishers, right? And Taker wins with the tombstone, and everything looked pretty good. What do you think the fans would say?
It's what they predicted.
The match was only 4 minutes.
They would say they can't go. They were gassed. It was boring. It was a spot fest, and they would just shit on it. It would be. Look, no matter what these guys would have done, I feel like it would have got shit on anyway, because everyone was against the show to begin with. People kind of hate Goldberg, and people are really against the Undertaker being the Undertaker anymore. So I think it was doomed to fail.
All right, now let's look at one Brock Lesnar who many fans have been vocal about. Go away. We don't want you to win any title and hold it hostage, because we know Brock's a smart man. He gets paid the most money for the least amount of appearances. Why? Because he worked himself up to be a star. He had success outside of WWE. I believe it's 5 or 6-3 in the UFC. Regardless of what his record is, he had more wins and losses in real fights and held a championship. Okay? Vince McMahon thus pays him the money he demands because of that. And let's be honest, when Brock's around, ratings tend to be up a little bit more, kind of when Roman's around too. But I would say Brock trumps Roman, no doubt about that.
Brock brings in casual fans for sure.
Brock's been in the business for 20 years. Okay? Look, He wasn't on Raw or SmackDown this week, which neither was Roman. Raw and SmackDown, sure, against the NBA Finals Monday night, but I'm just saying, who's our champions? Seth, Becky, and Kofi. That's all I got to say. But look at Brock Lesnar. He works against anybody. We've seen him work AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor, Roman Reigns, Undertaker, Goldberg. He sells for anybody. He sold for the small guys. He sold for Goldberg. He probably got the best match out of The Undertaker other than Shawn Michaels and some of those Triple H matches. And that's a long WrestleMania career, but Brock Lesnar is great because when he works the old sandbags, it doesn't look awful, does it? But people shit on Brock Lesnar. So me watching Goldberg and Taker struggling against each other made me think Brock Lesnar's even better than I thought he was because he made Goldberg look awesome during that feud. He made Undertaker look good at WrestleMania 30. What's your take on this?
I hate Brock Lesnar, and not in the sense of I hate the person. I have genuine heel heat with him. I think as a performer, he's amazing. He's one of the biggest monsters in the business. I want to see him lose. I want to see him have matches. I want to see him on the stage, but I view him as the only credible heel in the company. What other monster heel do we have? Lars Sullivan, Braun Strowman. I mean, maybe Bray Wyatt. He's the only credible heel in the company. He could come out any night against any champion, take their title from him, and no one would complain other than saying we hate Brock Lesnar, but it's at least believable. It's something I can get into. I don't have to suspend disbelief when Brock Lesnar comes out and beats the crap out of Kofi or Seth and takes their belt. I think he's the best heel in the company, and probably for the past couple of years.
Yeah, and the only heel right now better than him is Chris Jericho, because Chris Jericho is always reinventing himself.
MJF.
And but he just doesn't have that traction. He's the potential top heel. He could be really, really good. He just doesn't have enough traction yet with casuals and mainstream. But being in AEW, perhaps that'll elevate him. But look at Chris Jericho. He knows people love him. So he knows pretty much whatever he typically does. People might boo at the show, but they're going to tweet him, "You're awesome, Jericho. We love you." He's going one step further. He's playing, we talked about after Double or Nothing, he boycotted the StarCast thing and sent a cardboard cutout of himself. He's boycotting this Fyter Fest now because it's free. He's making himself look like an arrogant prick that hates the fans and is there just to make money. And he's telling people to go F them, F their A and all of this stuff on Twitter. Dude, that's the freedom not working for WWE because he can be rated R. And I love how he's doing everything he can to get people to genuinely hate him. And it's funny because I'm not Chris Jericho really in the wrestling business. I'm like, shit, I've been doing that, right, Rob? I've been doing what Jericho's been doing. Yes, dude, I actually gave Jericho permission to bring out a roll of tape and make fans put duct tape on their mouth or put duct tape on his mouth because the fans are too good for him to cut a promo for. I would pop if Chris Jericho did something with duct tape at a future show. But so, yeah, Brock Lesnar, great heel, probably the best one in WWE.
Oh, for sure.
And of course, Chris Jericho. And they're even smart enough to know, Brock really doesn't do anything on social media. It's all kind of through Paul Heyman. But Jericho's taking shots at Brock. And whether that's real heat or not, Jericho knows how to play the game. And so that's another veteran. When you see Jericho in a match, he's 48, 49 years old, right? I thought he had a fantastic match versus Okada. Some people out there were disappointed because Jericho does look like the aging rock star. He said on Busted Open Radio on Bully Ray's show that he's gained 15 pounds. He drinks a little extra. He wants those love handles. He wants to look like Axl Rose and Vince Neil. He's literally wants to be an aging rock star. That's his gimmick, going over to Japan, wearing the makeup. And it's brilliant. So he's going to be a little bit slower. He's older. But I still watched some of those highlights of that match. The lion salt was awesome. Yeah. The missile drop kick that he does. And it's like, what are people mad about when they watch a match with Jericho and it's more of a fight than a wrestling match? Why does everything have to be crisp and clean like Omega and like a Will Ospreay and Ricochet? That's not what wrestling is. So What do you think? I think Jericho's doing some of the best work in his career. Maybe the
Absolutely.
best.
So I will say this. If Chris Jericho is out of shape, I wish I was as out of shape as Chris Jericho, for one.
Yep, that's a good point.
Okay. Second, yeah, Chris Jericho may be the best character in the history of wrestling. You have to put him up there with Flair and some of these other guys, because look, this guy has reinvented himself so many times. He has his fingers on that pulse, and every time he gets the feeling that maybe things are stale, he just changes the game, does everything his own way, and he makes it work no matter what. Chris Jericho is a legend. Everyone needs to enjoy everything this man's doing right now, because he's not going to be around forever. These are highlights that you will show your children. These are highlights that Dave Meltzer will rant about in dementia in 25 years at the nursing home. These are great moments that everyone should just take it in, man.
And it's all because Goldberg wouldn't have a 30-second squash match with him in WCW. Yeah. So Jericho, imagine if Goldberg, all Jericho wanted was that program to end on a pay-per-view, and Jericho got squashed by Goldberg. What happens if that happened and Jericho never jumped ship and was with the WCW group when Vince absorbed him and WWF absorbed him? Like, do you think Jericho would have became a bigger star because he stayed with WCW, which to Vince McMahon's eyes, you know. So think about it. We talked about Goldberg. See how this all twines together? Thanks, Bill Goldberg. You're the one that helped create the megastar in Chris Jericho. And who would have thought that a Westerner would keep a Japanese wrestler who just won his match and defended his title from being able to get his flowers and cut his promo? I guess there were legit people so pissed that after the match, Jericho attacked Okada and did not allow that. Well, guess what, people? Does every match have to end with the good guy doing that? Why can't a heel get heat and make you want to see Jericho get his ass kicked again, this maybe next time by Tanahashi? Jericho sold the next show. The fans didn't get to see Okada do his little thing after a successful defense. Good. Jericho kept them from seeing that, started a potentially new program, and is now creating a buzz for the next show. Isn't that what professional wrestling is about?
He's a promoter in a wrestler's body. I don't know how he does it. The guy's a genius.
So absolutely fantastic. Kudos to Jericho. Kudos to Brock Lesnar. I mean, I can't say kudos to anybody else we talked about today. But anything else you would like to bring up here on Virtue's Brand of Wrestling? How about we'll have a segment at the end of every week on this show. And this last segment is called Vice's Brand of Wrestling. What do you, and if I put you on the spot,
I have something I want to talk about. Yeah. I am absolutely sick of Kofi Kingston and the New Day. It is so played out. I don't care. Kofi is the worst champion. And I'm going to go ahead and use my virtue hyperbole in this segment that I have and say that Kofi Kingston is a worse champion than Jinder Mahal ever was. Because at least Jinder Mahal took himself seriously. He was the main of. It's not like he came out with the Singh brothers carrying their bags. It's not like he came out with the Singh brothers throwing pancakes to the crowd. No, he was front. He was center. He was the focus of that group. While Kofi Kingston is a third man in a faction that's overrated and probably past its prime. I don't care about him anymore. I don't want to see it. He's absolutely the worst thing on TV right now. And
dude, I'm throwing someone under the bus because of that rant of yours, and I want your take. Right? I don't really hate, Ryan Satin. I hate Ryan Satin. Wade Keller. I hate Wade Keller.
Sure.
Dave Meltzer. We explain it.
Sure.
But let me bring up Sean Ross Sapp. He does his Fightful website, and I've seen him. You know, he used to do podcasts with Vince Russo. Mm-hmm. Why in the hell? What's his position on putting Kofi over? Like, he is hardcore putting Kofi over and calling anybody that doesn't like Kofi's push ignorant and stupid. That sounds like a virtue gimmick, but from the opposite. What do you think his position is? I mean, I'm respecting that's his opinion, but he hasn't given me anything good other than Kofi's getting booked to go over these people and as having great matches. Well, having great matches is if you work with people that can work well with you and you're getting 15, 20, 30-minute spots. So what's Kofi really doing other than getting the push?
I don't know, man. I would have liked to have seen Dolph Ziggler beat him for the championship and have Brock cash in on him. I don't think we necessarily need to have Brock come out and squash Kofi. He could lose it and then Brock could cash in on the winner. But you know what? Kofi Kingston and Baron Corbin to me are basically the same person. Kofi Kingston is Baron Corbin without the heat. That's all he is.
Dude,
Boring.
I'm telling you, the only and he would disagree with me because somehow Sean Ross Sapp just loves Kofi as the champion. I think the reason why Kofi's in this spot right now, and he's still in this spot, and we talked about this because when Vince sees Kofi, still has the gimmick on, still has the music, the group music, and has the plate of pancakes, Vince doesn't see Kofi as the champion. He's seeing the New Day. And when the New Day first came in, they were supposed to be these baby faces, and it miserably flopped. And people were like, "What the hell are these guys?" And they had to go through the whole heel process to end up getting liked. But ultimately, they were a mid-card act. But I think Vince sees this as New Day's main event. I always knew they would be. Not necessarily Kofi. I think because the New Day as a group is why Vince is letting Kofi ride with this thing. And for people to say, like, this is such a great time and he's an awesome champion, let's bring up the numbers again. Kofi's the WWE champion. Seth Rollins is the Universal. Becky Lynch is the Raw Women's. And Bayley is the SmackDown Women's. Those are your 4 main titles, right, Rob?
I forgot Bayley was around,
yes.
But yeah, that's true.
Okay. No Brock Lesnar on this past Raw and SmackDown, and even no Roman Reigns, and they were flirting with all-time lows on both shows. I rest my case. There is no – I can't even argue with this anymore when people say credible champions, because now it just sounds like they're marking out for his work rate.
Yeah, they're also not doing favors by having the same tag team matches over and over and over. I mean, what feuds are there to even do for these champions? Because everyone's been booked 50-50. Like, who could challenge Seth Rollins right now? Again, I'm going to go on record saying Seth Rollins is one of my favorites of all time. I hate face Seth Rollins.
Yeah, but you need something different. Like,
yes,
like Rollins coming out there and just still having that title. Then we talked about, well, what would you do with like Bray Wyatt if all of a sudden these Firefly Funhouses stop? Dude, have him come out and just freaking attack Rollins and like have the gloves on and have him do happy face and then serious face. Have Bray all of a sudden get elevated. They never pushed him. But I'm only saying him because he's holding a little bit of momentum. Those YouTube videos are getting 1 million hits a week for a kid's Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood with sadistic tendencies vignette, more or less. He's getting 1 million like plus views. There's some traction there. Who else? I mean, I don't know.
I like the Velveteen Dream.
Vince McMahon's secret weapon, man. So many people think he hasn't been called up yet because I think he's caught Vince's eye. I think Vince has talked to him in person on the phone, and maybe Triple H is involved there. And I really think that Velveteen even knows that he's the next guy, and he's going to get this Rock-like, early Randy Orton-like push from Vince McMahon, even more than when Kevin Owens first came up and he had that feud with Cena. And I guess I'll eat crow if he gets called up and he gets put in the mid-card and all of a sudden he's nothing. I really think, though, Shawn Michaels is a bridge to that, too, because he's been working close with Velveteen, reportedly in NXT. And he's got a lot of Vince's ear. Shawn always has. What do you think? Why do you think Velveteen's like putting Vince McMahon over recently? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There's something going on, and I think Vince has his hand on the detonator. And the missile is known as Velveteen Dream. I really, really do. I'm starting to believe that.
Would you have Velveteen Dream go on SmackDown to win that title and then just have Bray take the Universal title? Do you think that would help ratings?
Anything. Velveteen, he should come up and immediately attack one of the top champions.
Yeah.
Immediately.
I agree.
And I don't know how they could play babyface heel roles, but just do his pose and come out in whatever type of throwback gear he wants to be in. And let's face it, they could use him to troll AEW.
Oh yeah.
He could come out and do the whole Jericho gimmick.
Do the Goldust thing.
Yes. And it was good to see Goldust put over Vince Russo in a tweet. I don't know if you saw that the other day.
I didn't see that, no.
Somebody said at StarCast, they asked Dustin, did you like anything Vince Russo did for your Goldust character? And then he said no. And when Russo heard that, Russo suspected that it was just Dustin placating to the AEW marks. Well, someone called Dustin out on that on Twitter and said, "Why do you hate Vince? Didn't he work with you on the Goldust character? Isn't that kind of what got you more noticed in the wrestling business outside of your father's shadow?" And Dustin replied to this guy yes, Vince helped me. Vince made me be the best I could be at that time. Like Dustin put Vince over. So I like seeing that. And now it's not just Dustin Rhodes. It's been Mick Foley, Steve Austin, The Rock, Shawn Michaels. You have a lot of credible Attitude Era stars that have said Vince Russo helped them. That's all I got to say. And I know you don't have much to say about Vince Russo, but you can't deny what I just said there.
I will say that Vince Russo is responsible for some of my favorite and some of my least favorite things. He had a huge impact on wrestling. I will never take away his talent. I think he needs the filter of Vince McMahon. I think him and Vince McMahon were just a perfect pairing for each other.
So if you say he needed Vince McMahon as a filter, I could
Vince
say
Vince
him. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. They were
it's like an intertwining filter. Yes. And they brought out the best television. And you know what was so smart about that era, Rob? Vince Russo and McMahon then didn't give you a lot of wrestling on TV. It was short matches. Yeah. They put together guys that weren't really feuding. That's the matches you saw on TV. Wrestling was hardly on Raw because they made you pay for it.
That's right.
And and when you watch the pay-per-view, then all of a sudden you really wanted to see the wrestling. That formula worked so well, and I wish we had more of it.
Wait. You're saying that if we don't see the same two people fight for 6 weeks, that we'll be excited for the pay-per-views?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And maybe don't even have them maybe just have them banter from a distance, and then the go-home show, then you have your pull-aparts and stuff like that, and then now you're going to have good go-home shows.
I said,
you brought this up. Rob. What happened?
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I know we brought this up before, but in my opinion, one of the greatest segments to build up a match was Austin throwing Rock's belt off the bridge. They weren't even in the same building. And it was so tense. And they both, granted, those are two of the greatest to ever do it. Probably top 5. So, but I'm just saying, you could still write things like that. You could still build characters up. Steve Austin and The Rock are phenomenal talents. If booked right and written for correctly, you could still build stars big enough that you don't even have to have them fight, and people will pay. People were paid $50 to watch those back then.
I know. And dude, last thing about Russo, I know his run in WCW doesn't go over well with fans because at that point he knew WWE was winning by the time he even got to WCW. Well, and he knew the stars that WWE had, and people like Jericho were jumping ship. And then Benoit and the Radicals went over. So Russo knew he had to just be crazier than ever. And I think that's a lot of why WCW 2000 was the way it was with David Arquette. Look, it really wasn't his decision on the David Arquette thing. That was a team decision that Eric Bischoff even signed off on. But, Russo putting the title on himself and stuff like that, it did get crazy. But he did get Booker T over as a world champion. He did want to get the younger guys over, like the Natural Born Thrillers or whatever, the Sean O'Hares, the whoever else, the Chuck Palumbo. And today, a lot of wrestling fans like to see the newer generation get pushed. Back then, Russo was kind of revolutionary with that. It really didn't work, but he tried. Right. He
was also in there with Kevin Nash trying to make things happen too. It wasn't just Vince Russo making a lot of bad decisions. There was a lot of people making bad decisions. And I think you're right. I think Vince Russo was just throwing Hail Marys at that point because he was down by 50 with 2 minutes to go. And what else are you going to do?
And when he went to, he went back to WWE in 2002, and he was going to probably end up being the lead writer behind Stephanie. So the second lead writer. And Vince hired him back, but then he had a conference call with Stephanie McMahon who belittled him, and he quit. So he wasn't even back there 2 weeks. Then he partnered with Jeff Jarrett and did that early TNA stuff, which think about that. That early TNA stuff, I know people dog TNA. The first couple of years of TNA were weekly pay-per-views. Vince wrote that. And they had to pay it was like $10 a week or whatever. They ended up getting a studio deal, a TV deal. At one point, they had 2 million viewers when they got Hogan and stuff in there. And Russo wrote a lot of that TV, helped get AJ and Joe and some of those guys. And look where they are now.
Daniel, yeah.
And so he's been a successful writer, even though he's probably thrown a lot of shit against the wall. But some of that shit that stuck, it's all-time great. So anyway, this is, I guess, Vince Russo tribute. And I can do that because Big Vito and Russo are bros. This is the BigVitoBrand.com. Rob, Did I just turn your subject into something completely different right there?
No, and it all fits together. It's like poetry. It rhymes. It all works.
I know we probably are hitting 30 or 40 minutes this week. That's all I got. So you want to do your plug?
I'll do my plug. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Xenomecha, Xenomecha. It has been absolutely great doing these shows with you, Mr. Virtue. And if people want to see more of us, where are they going to look?
They are going to look on WrestlingWithWrestling.com. We do a show like once a month, once every 3 weeks for good old Andre. It's called Wrestling with Virtue. You can also see Rob with me every week here on the Big Vito brand on Virtue's Brand of Wrestling. And, of course, eventually on some of those other sites, go Team No DQ. But that's going to be interesting, Rob, because once you do become part of Team No DQ, if you choose to be in the group chat, I don't think you have to shill out and buy shirts and do super chats all the time. But you're going to – I don't know how long you'll stick around in that chat. But and look, I don't hate – look, for the record, because I don't know who might watch this and try to send some information back – I have no problem with anybody on Team No DQ. We're going to go to Toronto for SummerSlam. They're going to see a complete different version of Dave, right? But the fact that, they want to hate me, I don't know if I should be happy or like dreading the meetup now, but it is what it is.
I will say, Virtue, as your number one co-host, the greatest person you've ever hosted a podcast with.
Sorry,
Right, I'm not, but yeah, I think you'll do fine in Toronto. I think it'll be fun, and I think maybe they can actually see Virtue and not get worked. So,
yep. Well, thank you, Mr. Remarkable Robbie Vice. So for Rob Vice, I am Virtue. Follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. Go to my Facebook, NoDQ.com/Virtue. You will see all my content on either site, my game stuff, all that good stuff. That is it for this week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.